Now, who hasn't fantasized about owning or driving a Maruti Suzuki Gypsy? It's been a timeless icon of ruggedness, and over the years, Maruti has tried to recreate the magic in more premium segments, like with the Grand Vitara, but nothing quite clicked. But the Vitara name is coming back to the Indian market with this, the Vitara Brezza, and it's playing in a price segment that Maruti knows very well. So can the Vitara Brezza be the it SUV? As in, the car that can get Indians craving for an SUV from Maruti Suzuki once more. Let's find out. Well, first impressions? The stance and proportions of the Brezza are great. The flat waistline and the contrasting colors give it a bit more presence. But it is a rather simple and functional design. But then adding some spice to the package are the details. The bold chrome grille gives it a strong look, while the large air dam in the sculpted bumper gives it a slightly sporty look. And the bullhorn-like daytime running lights offered on the ZDI variants add a bit of friendliness to the package. Of course, the floating roof is a great highlight, especially when it's done in the contrast white color option. Styling at the rear isn't radical, but the split tail lights with the bullhorn light guides and the embossed chrome bar look quite smart. Now, Maruti have played safe on the exterior design and on the interior design. You can look at this dash here. It's pretty simple, straightforward, but yes, it's smart. Some interesting touches are these textures for the dash top, and well, the instrument cluster here has this spherical shape for the dials. It's a combination of square and circle. Maruti made that term up. Pretty cool though, because it's got backlight which you can adjust according to the color of your car, so it's pretty funky that way. And that aside, my favorite bit of the dash has to be the center console. It's simple, smart, and the buttons here for the aircon vents work really nicely, feel very nicely damped. And that aside, of course, this Vitara Brezza, the top end variant, is very well equipped. Well, you have a push-button start-stop for the engine, cruise control, automatic headlamps, powered folding ORVMs, and rain-sensing wipers on this top-end trim. There's also a large touchscreen that acts as the infotainment center and offers Apple's CarPlay amongst its connectivity options. The bright touchscreen is also used for the reversing camera and the navigation system, but this is only offered on the ZDI Plus variant. There's plenty of storage in the cabin, and it also has this nifty under-seat tray. On the safety front, Maruti is offering a driver airbag as standard across all the variants, while ABS and a passenger side airbag is an option on the LDI and VDI variants, while this is standard on the ZDI variants. Now, where the Brezza really scores is in terms of sense of space in the cabin. You've got great glass area, it feels very roomy because of that, but it isn't just that, it's the cabin width. It just makes it feel so nice and spacious. 3 abreast, not a problem. That aside, you can see how much knee room is there on offer here. The driver's seat is set to my position, so even taller passengers can be accommodated here, and there's plenty of headroom. The only area where I feel they could have done a little bit better would have been in terms of offering better under-thigh support, and one thing missing, of course, is that there are no aircon vents here for the rear. And then it was time to check out the 328-litre boot. Now, in terms of numbers, the boot space might not seem like much, but lift this open and you'll find a healthy sized boot, and importantly, it's well shaped. There's a lot of width, so getting 2 suitcases in here, just lie them down flat. I think one big, one small, you could manage that. But if you want to expand the boot space, there's a really nice little touch here on the Vitara Brezza. Check this out. Just a few simple tugs, and in under a minute, you'll get a nice extended flat boot floor. Finally, it was time to pay attention to what is packed under the Brezza's hood, the DDIS 200 engine. This is the 1.3-litre turbo diesel producing 89 bhp and a strong 20.4 kilograms of torque.
familiar feature of this 1.3 litre diesel engine that we've seen on Maruti Suzuki's, that you get a fair amount of turbo lag low down in the rev range, and then there's that sudden rush of power. But things are a little bit better here on the Vitara Brezza because the gearing is really quite smart. So even when the speeds and the revs drop, you do get a decent amount of drivability. So ambling around in the city shouldn't be difficult unless and until you really let the revs drop.
Well, to change pace, you can rely on the light action of the clutch, while the 5-speed gearbox requires just a little bit of muscle to get the shifts done.
Get past 2000 RPM and get ready for that slug of torque. And it feels really nice as you see the rev needle shoot past 3000 RPM. The other good thing is that the revs don't just die out. You can actually use it to pass 4000 to about 4500 RPM quite nicely. And that makes this quite a nice engine for the highway.
The Brezza, in fact, boasts of a 5300 RPM rev limiter. That's quite high for a diesel car. As you spend more time behind the wheel of the Brezza, one subtle sense tends to grow on you.
In some ways, the Vitara Brezza feels very European, and that really shouldn't come as a surprise because it is based on a modified platform that's used on the European Vitara. Take the ride quality for instance. It has a hint of firmness to it, and in my books, on the whole, it's not a bad thing. Yeah, you do feel a little bit of the road surface creep into the cabin and some bumps might come through, but on the whole, ride quality is really quite absorbent. Suspension works silently, so the cabin does feel calm. The good part about the setup is that it gives you a great sense of confidence. When you're on the highway doing higher speeds for longer distances, it just makes the driving experience more relaxed.
The high-speed stability is truly impressive, and as you motor along for kilometers on end, something else hits you.
There's also the cabin refinement when it comes to vibration. It's really very well damped. Even when you're lugging at low speeds, low engine RPMs, you really don't feel it inside the cabin. The noise from the motor is also very well suppressed, which can be really quite audible in some other Maruti Suzuki cars.
On top of that, wind noise, road noise and tire noise are almost non-existent, making this a fairly calm cabin. On the road, you realize that the seating position isn't quite as high and commanding as you'd like from something that's dubbed as an SUV. But a lower stance has its advantages.
So what's the Vitara Brezza like to drive when you're really in that mood to drive? Well, it's not particularly exciting, but it really doesn't do anything wrong either. The steering, for instance, is pretty direct, but it just doesn't feel crisp. The way it turns into corners is quite blunted, it feels solid, but again, it's not as quick and as sharp as you'd want it to be to really hit that sweet spot. But on the whole, I've got to say, it feels safe and planted, and that should do for most people.
A lot of its composure is also down to the wider and grippy 215/60 R16 Apollo tires that are offered on the top-end ZDI variant. So has Maruti Suzuki finally managed to hit the sweet spot with the Vitara Brezza?
One thing's pretty clear. Maruti Suzuki's new Vitara Brezza isn't going to tug at your heartstrings the way the Gypsy has and does even today. But just because it's unexciting and a little understated, do not let it drop off your radar if you're in the market for a compact SUV, because underneath is a really solid and sensible package. When you round up the kind of performance, drivability, the comfort, the sense of space and the features that this car offers, you realize that it's a really solid, well-rounded package. And then factor in the price that is being offered at, it's kind of hard to argue against Maruti Suzuki's new Vitara Brezza.